Hi, Tim.
Hi, Nozomi. It's great to be here
Hi.
with you today.
Yeah, so wonderful to be on LinkedIn Live with you, Tim. So before we jump into a lot of things, because we have a lot to talk about,
Absolutely.
tell everyone where you've been.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been doing a lot of traveling over the last 3 weeks, which is also one of the reasons why it's been a little while since our last recording. I went to spend a few days in Istanbul, Turkey. Then I went to Germany to spend some quality time with my family, to see friends, do a little bit of traveling around, exploring and discovery, which to me, talking about building capacity, is such an powerful and important tool to really feel alive and to just rejuvenate and bring the energy back. So it's been super exciting, but it's also great to be back here and to be continuing our conversation.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I know there's so many things I want to ask you about your trip, but it's so happy to hear that you um, really come back resourced, fully resourced, and I really energized. And I know you've been back for about a week, but you've already been busy. But hopefully, all that resourcing you have done is, as we say, your demands or your resources. I can't even say it.
Hmm.
Resources. It's Friday here.
I know, right?
We're doing this. Your resources is exceeding your demand so that you are able to really um, be creative, be proactive, and fully showing up.
Like a good leader.
Yeah, yeah, like a good leader. That you really, yeah, that's the foundation of capacity that you have to have your resources exceeding your demands. So awesome, awesome. I realize I didn't really introduce myself, and Tim, of course, I'll give it back to you. But I'm Nozomi Morgan, founder and CEO of Michiki Morgan Worldwide. We are a intercultural leadership development firm, and we work with multinational, multicultural organizations to really help their leaders to become what we call boundaryless leaders. But what that means is leaders that who can navigate and really lead and make positive impact in this world beyond borders and boundaries. And today we've already started Tim about Tim. I have Tim, my wonderful partner in crime. So Tim, if you can please introduce yourself.
Well, I am very, very happy and fortunate to be the lead coach here at Michiki Morgan and to be working very closely with Nozomi on a multitude of different projects. I am primarily a leadership and organizational development coach, and I'm also leading a couple of our coaching initiatives, especially in higher education, but also beyond. So I'm very happy to be here and to continue talking about boundaryless leadership, the three C's, and today in particular
Yes.
about leadership mindsets and assumptions, which is a super important topic, which we kind of been talking around. But I think
Hmm.
today would be a great opportunity to really bring it home and really dig it a little bit deeper into that particular topic that's so important.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So for those who've been on our LinkedIn Lives in the past, you've heard us start with what we call check-in questions. So we'll keep that tradition going. And so today, I'll ask you, Tim. So what has your attention today?
It's a great question. And I had a lot of work today on different projects and different things going on. But in preparation for this meeting and also with your help, Nozomi, one of the things that I come back to a lot, and that we come back to also in building leadership capacity, is the focus on staying grounded and centered and present and being resourced in the moment. In coaching, we always talk about dancing with the client in the moment. And the more I think about leadership, leadership is also about dancing in the moment, but you need to have the resources. So my attention really today is on possessing that groundedness and that focus and that centeredness to be able to be creative, to have my mind expand, to react and respond, not just react, but really respond to whatever comes my way. Because our conversations sometimes they take some very unexpected turns.
Yes.
They're also in everyday life. There are all these projects, all these things, and we want to make sure that we are and do the best we can be and do. And so my attention really is on being grounded, being centered, being focused, and being present. especially for our conversation today.
I love that. That's so beautifully said, but so and I should say but and so powerful. And thank you for bringing up about being grounded. So what we know through the work that we do, but also scientifically we know is that in order to really, like you said, respond in a way that like the best way we can, best way possible, we know we need to be able to um, really, instead of reacting, so
Hmm.
instead of taking the action, the first thing, basically just like a knee-jerk reaction, is that you need to be able to really process what's going on, which means you need to be calm.
Hmm.
And that's where the grounding practice exercise is so powerful. And we're not saying you have to take like you don't have to go on like a quiet retreat for a month or a week.
Yeah,
It,
that sure would be nice, though. I'll take
yeah,
it
we're
anytime
not
if you
saying
have
not
one,
to.
and let's do it.
Yeah, but we're what we're introducing, and this is part of the in our trainings and workshops that we
Hmm.
introduce, is there very simple exercises that you can do. And when I say exercise, literally, it's like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Obviously, you can like we were joking earlier about the quiet retreat. You can go on as much as you want, but there's a lot of tools that you can use. It's literally you can just do right before you're going to have a difficult conversation or just when you, like you said, unexpected turn and you're like, what the heck?
Have to
And
make a big decision, all these things, right?
yeah, or a lot of times I say, especially like that, when someone cuts you off when you're driving, like those moments you're like, what the, that too, there's tools that you can use, which is actually that you already have and you're already doing, which is your breath. Um, so there's a lot of things that we teach in a leadership capacity accelerator and our leadership programs that allows you to respond in the best way possible at that moment so that you don't regret and it doesn't make the situation worse than it already is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Tim, for
So what
bringing.
about you?
Oh,
What
me.
has
Yeah.
your
Well,
attention
that was
today?
definitely um, something because we were kind of talking about it too before. And for everyone, um, we actually started before we hit the record button today, started with a grounding exercise. And it's so important. But okay, let me focus on what has my attention today. So what has my attention today um actually is around intention. Um, so intention is a vague word, but and this may actually lead to today's topic. But what I have found, and the reason why this is on my mind today is because we have a client that we're working with right now, and we're working. Well, we haven't started yet, but we are going to work with a president of a company, and this president of the company, um, he's new. It's been like about a year. And there's a lot of problems that are happening within the company because of the way he leads, to make it simple. And the reason why intention comes up is because since we haven't really gone deep yet, but even in the very early stage of this work that we're doing, we already know that he doesn't have bad intentions.
Hmm.
He thinks he's doing the right thing
Hmm.
based on, the everything we've seen, like presentations and this and that. Like we can tell that he's trying actually really hard, but it's not landing. Well, I should say it worse. It's really creating problems. And so what my the ten, what's on my mind right now is that there's so many circumstances, so many situations in our lives that you are doing it thinking that it's for someone's good or with good intentions, but for some reason it doesn't work out. and it actually makes it worse. Um, and it's just so interesting. I just thought that's so interesting about humans is that we can't read each other's minds. Um, but yeah, that was just on my mind right now, and
Mhm.
really being intentional about that, right? And that's like the curiosity. That's the humility as a leader,
Mhm.
always thinking like, wait, if it's not working, like, why is that? Not that I'm doing it right. It's like maybe there's something that I'm missing, or maybe like why isn't it landing? And I also that specifically with this case, and other presidents we worked with, especially when they have good intentions, what's challenging is that because they believe they're doing the right thing, is that they don't ask for help.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah,
That happens a lot.
which understanding that they're totally capable people, obviously being a president, but if they could have just asked one of their staff members, one of their team members, and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" It might have solved a lot of things
Yeah.
instead of just trying to do it on their own because they can. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. So yeah, a lot of thoughts around that. Sorry, I can keep on going on. But that's what was on my mind because I'm in the middle of that project,
Yeah.
and I was literally just talking to the client about that. But yeah, anyhow.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because it's so typical for a lot of leaders, especially, when you have people who embrace kind of we're kind of stuck in a somewhat outdated idea and concept of what leadership is, where
Yeah.
for a lot of people, leadership is positional. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. And so when you think that your leadership is positional, you also a lot of times assume, right,
Yeah.
that because you are in a position of leadership, you need to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And you think that by asking people for help, for example, what the example you were just talking about, you actually undermine your claim to leadership uh,
Hmm.
instead of strengthening it, right? But well, and this I think beautifully intersects actually with today's topic because you also address this big contrast between intention and impact,
Hmm.
right? And what we intend often is a stark contrast to the impact we actually have. And I was thinking, and I have been thinking for a while, and it really became clear um, while you were talking, is what is the bridge between those two?
Mm.
And the bridge is, of course, humility, curiosity, all these things, but I think it ultimately feeds into the assumptions
Hmm.
that drive how we externalize our intentions.
Hmm.
What goes through our mind? Um, so, for example, one of the most fundamental assumptions is what happens actually if we assume that everybody around us is trying to do their best.
Hmm.
And I've asked this question in workshops and with clients. I said, "Do so the people around you, are they trying to do their best?" And it was like, "Oh, no, 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 they're just lazy, they're distracted, whatever." And I said, "Well, but what would happen if you did assume?
Hmm.
How would that change?" Because the result of our assumptions is really our mindset. It's hard to control our mindset, but it's easier to control our assumptions. Our assumptions feed into the mindset. And I think the mindset then impacts our intentions and how we uh, verbalize and externalize those intentions. So I think, that bridge between intention and impact really is our assumptions at the heart of it. And so yeah, so it's beautiful actually the example that you gave. I'm really glad that you brought this up because it leads perfectly into our today's topic.
Yeah. So let's share with everyone what our topic is today. So, Tim, what is our
Yeah.
topic today?
Well, as I've been kind of been beating around the bush and kind of poking a little bit into the bush, but it is about assumptions. So we talked about boundaryless leadership. We've been talking about the three C's: capacity, collective wisdom, and co-creation. And as a leader who wants to bring out the collective wisdom inherent in your team, who wants to build capacity not just in your team, but
Mhm.
also in yourself as a leader who wants to co-create outcomes together with everybody so that the outcome is owned, has shared ownership, and bringing creative solutions to the world. One of the things that is really driving it is how we as leaders approach our work, how we approach our peers, our subordinates, our superiors. And the same is true for all our individual team members, right? What do we assume? We're all biased human beings, each and every one of us. And even when we first start seeing a person, we immediately form an opinion about him, whether or not we want to admit it, but we do, right?
Yeah.
So just because somebody looks or talks or whatever in a certain way, we make assumptions about this person.
Mhm.
And that will drive the way that will immediately put a certain set of glasses on our eyes
Yeah.
through which we will see how this person will interpret the actions and the words and everything of that person, right? So what we're trying to dig into, or what we will be digging into today, is really what are some of those assumptions that traditional leaders embrace versus boundaryless leaders, a
Mhm.
modern leadership style. And I've already addressed one of them, and that is the idea of, do we assume that everybody is trying, not necessarily actually according to our standards, doing the best work they can, but it is at least trying to do the best they can? And how will that change the way we delegate, we motivate, possibly we promote, but certainly the way we communicate those people? Um, and I don't know what your thoughts are here, but I mean, this is a central and powerful question. And also giving ourselves the grace, let's say, and self-compassion to say, you know what, I am trying to do the best I can, rather than beating yourself up over something that maybe you didn't do, or you didn't do as well as you wanted to, right? So again, all of this goes both ways, externally, but also internally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the question that um, comes up in what you've mentioned, what would our teams and organizations look like if we as leaders assume that our
Hmm.
employees are naturally curious and are trying to do their
Hmm.
best they can? I think, like you said, that come from, right? If you come from that place, instead of being that, oh, everyone is lazy, everyone doesn't want to work, they all want to do the bare minimum, they're just here to get, collect their paycheck. If you have a view like
Hmm.
that, then everything, so what that means is that you're basically assuming everyone is here not to do their best work, right? Just
Yeah.
to simplify it. Then everything that happens, you see it from that lens. So you only can see or point out what they're lacking, what they're not doing.
Mhm.
And because that's what you see, because you're looking for those things.
Exactly right.
And the opposite, like, if we would look at our employees that they are doing their best, they have the best intentions, then you can see what if something is not going well or things are not happening well, then you'll see it from a place of how can I support this person so that they can. So it's a completely different way of approaching. And I see this more as a lens. It's a
Hmm.
different lens because you can change the lens, right? Like you said, it's mindset. That mindset is what, and just to simplify, I like, because mindset is kind of this vague word. It's
Hmm.
hard to grasp. So I'd like to just call it lens for now. It's if you when you look through the world through that lens, you do see things differently. You see someone, if they're struggling, they see them struggling because they're trying to do better, but needs help. But if you see it through the lens of, oh, everyone's trying not to do their best, they're just here to collect the paycheck,
Yep.
then you see the person who is not, say, performing to a certain level, seeing that they're not trying,
Yep.
they're incompetent,
Yep.
they don't care. So it's a completely different way of looking at things. And then I would, so that's so for us, right, for boundaryless leaders, we fundamentally believe that everyone is here, that we're here meaning on earth, us together as humans, as people, are here that they do want to do their best.
Mhm.
And if they're not, there's a reason why. And the reason is, so we have to figure that out. So it could be there's things going on in their life. It could be there's a toxic relationship going on in the workplace. It could be they're not feeling well, health wise or mental health wise. There's a reason why they're not. It's not because they've chosen not to do well. There's something that's holding them back for them to do their best. Um, so we believe that's our fundamental belief. And I think if you're not, as a leader, if you're not able to believe in that,
Mhm.
then I don't really think there's any hope in, because we ultimately, with Boundaryless Leadership, is trying to, or helping and supporting to develop high performing leaders in high performing teams, just to, put it in that language. But if you come from a place, if you don't have that fundamental belief that everyone is here to do their best, then there's no way you can believe that you can ever have a high performing team,
Absolutely.
unless you're only picking people that are high performing at this moment. But the truth is, life happens to all of us. So even a high performing leader, say if there's tragic something in their life, or suddenly, there's a health problem,
Mhm.
if all these things happen in life, we're not like, and that's the difference between robots and humans, is that, we got ups and downs, right? We have good days, bad days. Maybe the teenage daughter was screaming at you in the morning, right? Whatever it is, or you had a fight with your partner, um or yeah, like, you stepped over, I don't know, your car got into a pothole, which happens a lot in Atlanta, and then you get a
Hmm.
flat tire, right? Like things like
Yes,
that.
exactly.
So anyhow, that's so this is so important, that really, if you cannot fundamentally believe that, I would say that why even bother to be a leader, right? Why
Yeah.
even bother to work with other people? You should, maybe it's better if you're isolated and just work by yourself. No, I'm just kidding, but
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this may sound a little harsh, but I think you're absolutely right. There's so many people who say, "Well, I'm a leader," and then they engage in behaviors that don't necessarily cement their claim to leadership. They're
Mm,
basically just top-down hierarchical managers. I
yeah.
draw a big distinction between those two, because really that the outdated mindset, I think, or assumption about leadership is almost like they go into the relationship, because this is a relationship between their employees or their other team members. They say, well, I don't think you do great work or that you want to do your best. Convince me that you are.
Hmm.
Convince me. Versus convince me that you're not. I'm just
Right.
assuming that you are, right? And you said earlier, there is a greater context. Everybody around us, including ourselves, we don't live in a vacuum. I mean, we live in a greater context, and counter to what many people and many leaders would assume is our lives do not just consist of work. There are other
Yeah.
things, right? We
Yeah.
have we have families, we have friends, we have a life outside of work. So the context is super important. And again, you talked about the curiosity that we as leaders need to maintain. We need to ask. We need to at least want to know a little bit about the people whom we lead. I know some of us are much more reserved. Some of us are very, very people centered, and we just want to have small talk. We want to ask questions, right? But this doesn't come natural to many of us. So for
Right.
those of us who don't necessarily gravitate toward that, to establishing this personal relationship, to ask about people's feelings, personal lives, it's worth remembering that it is an element of the whole relationship building. Because, and this is something that you hinted at, you talked about robots versus humans. I always talk about organizations as machines versus
Mm.
as living, breathing, complex, adaptive ecosystems,
Yeah.
right? And that is another fundamental assumption. I've met leaders who just assume that the organization they lead or the part of the organization they lead is just a machine.
Mm.
Ultimately, what they are leading is the sum of or equal to the sum of its parts, which is its employees.
Hmm.
Everybody serves a particular function. And if one employee, one function is not performed to the standards of that leader or to the organization, you just take that person out and replace him or her,
Hmm.
right? That's a really, really dangerous assumption that it's like that because there are relationships. It's like a fluff cloud. If you take something in, everything will rearrange. It's almost like on your phone, right? When you delete one icon, everything's going to start moving around. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like that too,
Yeah, so
right?
true.
So instead, being aware of those relationships, of the knowledge that's inherent in these positions,
Yeah.
of the institutional organizational knowledge there of the relationships between people. And so I think that is so important to just assume that the collection of the parts of the employees is so much more than the sum of its part in your organizational bubble.
Yeah, that I think that's so, like you said, so important. And I think a lot of people have never really had the opportunity to think that
Hmm.
way. So I love what you said. And we work with a lot of leaders who are not good at this.
Yeah.
So, like you said, a lot of people, it doesn't come naturally. We work with a lot of people who have so-called the backgrounds that are kind of like engineers,
Hmm.
um, PhD holders, extremely brilliant in what they do, but when it comes to people, not so much. Um, and but they're really good at what they have done from a technical standpoint. So they've been promoted into certain. And so this also goes to with other, like we've worked with a lot of IT type of people, accountants, a lot of people with those
Hmm.
technical abilities, you know,
Number focus, quantitative,
number,
right?
yeah, engineers, like a lot of people that, yeah, have
Hmm.
that quantitative skills, um, rather, I guess, and they can be amazing leaders as well, but just to stereotype, kind of stereotype, um, this conversation to use that as a is that a lot of them are not really great at people skills. And that's where we see a lot of them causing it creates a lot of challenges on their teams, and also it holds them back from getting promoted into higher positions,
Hmm.
even though they're working very hard, and then they burn out, or they just get stuck in that area, in that level. um, so we work with a lot of them. We've done a lot of executive coaching, um, and one of the things, and some of them are just are not really, they how do I say that, they're uncomfortable having those conversations or even social events, right? Like really connecting with others. So that's where we really help them to open up. And a lot of this actually, so a lot of them come because they're very smart, and they come and say, hey, can you help us with how to communicate better, how to, with other people, how to present better, how can I tell better stories?
Hmm.
And obviously there's a lot of experts in that, who better presentation skills and all that. And we can, but that's not necessarily our specialty, but we've definitely can. But what I have found, so those are kind of short-lived, what do you call it? It's very specific, short-lived is not the right word, very specific types of skill sets. But what I found that really, really actually um, helps them even deeper, that you can use in a lot of different ways. It actually opens up a lot of doors, I should say, or within them, is for them to actually have deeper conversations with
Yeah.
themselves.
Themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
if they're not able to have those
Hmm.
conversations with themselves, how could you have those conversations with other people? So some of them, or even that kind of small talk with themselves, not the
Well,
negative talk that they know how to do very, very well, not that, but having those caring conversations with themselves. Because the outside is a reflection of the inside, inside is a reflection of the outside. It goes both ways. So a lot of it actually starts with yourself,
mm,
because sometimes when they're very uncomfortable speaking like small talk with other people is because they don't have those kind of families type of conversations within themselves, because they're so focused on like work, 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 for example, or just asking how you're doing. If they were asked that question, they don't actually know how to respond to it.
yeah.
So if they don't know how to respond to it, why would they even ask that question, right? So that's kind of just to make it for those who are listening and there's a where do I start?
Yeah.
Actually, we'll start to have a good conversation where yourself practice with yourself, and that's where journaling helps.
Absolutely. I'm terrible at journaling, but I'm really good at talking to myself.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fine
But
too.
but and I know some of our listeners may actually chuckle. I made me smile earlier when you said that because some of us just walk around aimlessly, constantly talking to themselves. But it's not necessarily a conversation, right? I think that what you're saying is actually a step much further than that. It's actually to talk to you. So I would say, Tim, how are you actually doing today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Tim, do you really think that was the right response? Or how could you have made, like saying you to yourself
Yeah.
almost, right? So rather than I think I did, just asking yourself questions, I think that is a super powerful tool. And I hadn't really considered that in that regard because it allows us to express curiosity about
Yeah.
ourselves. And you're absolutely right. When we build this capacity of curiosity, bring coming back to capacity, right? It's easier to just flip it around and project the curiosity to other people when
Yeah.
we're comfortable with asking these questions and giving answers as well. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times, I think as leaders, we want to ask, like, well, how are you doing, Sally or John, whatever. But we're not comfortable with them asking us.
Right. Yeah.
That's another one. And that makes it one-sided. That hinders the relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you brought up the idea of stories earlier, and that is such an important aspect of building relationships and also of leading because stories give provide a why. I think, for me, as I've always, I've written about this and talked about this quite a bit, where we say the difference between management and leadership is management gives you the what and the how, maybe, but the leadership really provides the why.
Yeah.
And of course, you could say, well, this is why we're doing it. Well, I think there's a better way of doing that, is that by telling stories that people
Mhm.
understand the why. And um, this again comes back to, I think, two fundamental assumptions
Mhm.
of boundaryless contemporary leaders is that we assume that people are actually motivated by making a contribution. They're
Mm.
motivated by doing the right thing, not just for themselves. That'll be transactional, right? We pay you, so you get money, so whatever. But actually for the organization, for the greater good, for other people. And that we also acknowledge and assume that people value that contribution to something bigger than themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that is so essential. And I wanted to I can't not mention McGregor's theory Y and theory X. If our listeners haven't heard about that, I encourage you to look it up on your favorite search engine. I'm not going to say which one. Um, So McGregor theory X and theory Y, there's a lot of these assumptions kind of feed into this, and a lot of traditional leaders very much embrace a theory X mindset, theory X type of assumptions versus boundaryless leaders, contemporary leaders have very much a theory Y mindset, assuming curiosity, trying to do the best you can, uh, be motivated by purpose, and contributing to the greater good. There's greater values embedded in the work that they do, And so I think this is where the assumptions are so important in terms of how they feed into the mindset and how the mindset impacts the way we lead and
Yeah.
form relationships with other people.
So true. So as we're kind of wrapping this up, I would, if I could just say, this is easier said than done.
Hmm.
This is where is to actually challenge your assumptions. Um, challenge your assumptions. And that's kind of because when you see someone or you see your team or employee, and they're doing something and you assume they're doing so and so, challenge that assumption. It could be true. We're not saying that assumptions are wrong. We're just saying challenge that assumption. Is this true? How do I know it's true? How do I know this is like, is it a fact or is it my assumption? So, really
Hmm.
challenge that. And going back to, if I assumed that my team, my employee, my team member is actually, trying to do their best, how would this look different? Really challenge your assumption. Um, that would be kind of my recommendation or invitation, just where to start. And
Yep.
you can challenge yourself, going back to risk-free practice on yourself, right? You can do that too. And that's where, and for those who feel like, oh, this is really hard to do, I understand what you're saying. Or maybe it's like, I don't get it. Um, Totally fine too. I understand. This is not actually, this is really hard to switch, kind of reframe. That's where coaching really helps.
Yes.
That's what coaches do really, really well. Um, so if you're kind of seeing that, oh, there's something I need to do differently, but not need help or want support, and also being able to do this quicker, efficiently, effectively, this is where really having an executive coach will be
Hmm.
really a good option for you.
Because that's what we do. We lead clients into discovering that there's
Yeah.
certain things that trigger them and then help them develop strategies. And what you just said, Nozomi, I think is really worth repeating. So for those of you listening, when you feel that you're getting triggered, that there's something not right in a conversation that you're having, right? Pause, take a breath, and then maybe going back to what we talked about earlier, talking to yourself, just ask a question. What are you being you, right?
You're being
Assuming,
you, me. Yeah.
right? You being, so I would say, okay, Tim, what are you assuming right now about this person? You can, of course, do this internally, right?
Yeah.
Then ask, what else can I assume that is positive? That's a hard question because, again, we're so biased a lot of times against people.
Yeah.
And then ask, what difference does it make? Or
Mhm.
will it make? Would it make in the way you interact with that person? It's super difficult, especially in the moment. So perhaps this is a strategy you can implement after you've had maybe a not a very positive interaction with somebody and just say, okay, take a deep breath, try to objectify the situation, and then ask and go through these steps. And maybe next time use that mindset, that assumption, that different approach to when you're going into a situation. But as Nozomi said, we do that kind of work with our clients where we help them develop the strategies that work best for them, and it has tremendous ripple effects and impact on themselves, on their teams, on their organizations. So this is really where the power of coaching lies, and it
Yeah,
builds
absolutely.
tremendous capacity in leaders.
Yeah. So if you're interested, yeah, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to have a conversation around this, Tim or myself or some other team members. Yeah, would love to, as an invitation to you all. Well, thank you. I know we're at time. I'm sure we can keep on talking forever. Between Tim and I, we never have a lack of things to talk about. But thank you all for joining us today. You'll hear from us probably in about 2 weeks or so. We're kind of on a, what do you call it? Not random schedule, but we're kind of exploring what
Opportunistic as
opportunity
as
schedule
as
right
things
now.
develop, as we have time and situations
Yeah,
arise.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, look out for when our next live will be. But thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Tim.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Nozomi.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.